and welcome to our program. I'm Dr. Laura Murillo, President and CEO of the Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Today, we're talking about a very important topic related to our community, the country, and of course, the economic impact it has on all of us. Joining us today is none other than Congresswoman Sylvia R. Garcia. She's representing the 29th District of Texas. Good morning, Congresswoman.
Good morning. It's great that the weather has settled and it looks like we're going to have a great day today.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for your dedication to our community for so very long and all the role and impact you've had on the Hispanic Chamber and the broader business community. But let's get started with DACA. For folks who may not be familiarized with it, it is being threatened, and certainly the administration is implementing a crackdown across the country, which includes DACA. And we know that we're trying to protect those DACA recipients. And it's not just individuals, but the contributions that they make economically and contributions to our civic community. So if we can start there.
Well, just the background first. DACA is sometimes spoken interchangeably with dreamers, because DACA recipients, it's a protection that was a law that was signed by President Obama to protect all our unaccompanied minors that were coming into this country. And some accompany, they come with their parents. They've known other the country other than this one. In fact, I've had many of them tell me that, if they went to their home countries, they wouldn't know what to do, because some of them, frankly, don't even speak Spanish because they grew up here. They're native Texans or native USA. So DACA is a program. It's a deferred action for children, which means we defer deportation and give them protections while they're here. And that program has been in existence since the Obama days, but it's been in legal jumbo. It's been attacked by Republicans, and they have filed lawsuits. And in fact, the case, there's a case right here in Houston, is the case that we're waiting on to tell us whether or not DACA will be able to continue. Because for us in Texas, it means a lot. It's over 400,000 dreamers, again, that have lived here in Texas since they were small. They came with their parents. They have no choice. Laura, it's incredible to me when people say, "Oh no, send the children home too." Children don't have a choice. If you tell your kids, well, now your kids are a little teenager and up, so maybe they wouldn't listen. But when they're 5 and 6 and you tell them, "Come on, we're going to grandma's," they don't have a choice. They got to get in the car with you. They got to go to grandma's. Well, many of these folks came just like that. They traveled with their families, and they've been here. And in the Houston area, it's about 100,000. And it's been noted by folks that study these things that if the dreamers were to lose their protections, we would lose jobs in Texas to the tune of 2,600 jobs a month. 2,600 jobs a month would be lost here in Texas, because they support every industry. Many people look at the immigrant population and think construction, landscaping, and road building. We're everywhere during the pandemic, but for the dreamers, we wouldn't have had half the staff still in the hospitals. When I was in the White House and did an event for the DREAM Act, I met a young man who was in our fire department. They're everywhere. So it's about giving them protections and giving them a pathway to citizenship. They've been here many years. They deserve citizenship.
And what people don't realize is they've graduated from high school. Many of them have graduated from college. They are the most vetted people in this country.
Absolutely. And that's a great point, because, again, it's not what people think. And you'd be surprised, Laura, that, or should I say Dr. Murillo, what the polls show that 70 to 80% of Americans, public wants dreamers to have protections. Even over 50% of Republicans, just a little over 50, but I'll take it. Also, when polled, should dreamers be made citizens? They say yes, because dreamers, again, are everywhere. They're contributing to society. They're your neighbor. You see them at church, at the grocery store. They go to school with your kids. The average age of a dreamer when they first got here was 6 years old. Again, why are we trying to punish 6-year-olds? They don't have choices. They came here with their parents. They know no other country. In their heart, in their soul, in their mind, they're American.
So we know that there's a mass deportation plan in effect as we speak, and people are walking around in fear. And what many people perhaps do not understand is that economic impact and the unintended consequences to our workforce.
Mhm.
Congresswoman, please help people understand the implications of this.
Well, let me check my notes here to just be precise on the numbers. Okay, this is straight out of studies that have been done, many by GAO, which is a federal agency itself. DACA recipients contribute 6.2 billion. That's B with billion in federal taxes and 3.1 billion in state and local taxes. That's another myth. Oh, they don't pay taxes. They're freeloaders. No, they pay taxes. They pay local taxes. Every time they gas up, they pay the gasoline tax. Okay, every time they go to a concert, they pay all those fees and taxes. They're consumers just like we are. In Texas, Dreamers add 16 billion because Texas, I think, has the second highest number of Dreamers in the country. So they make great contributions to Texas. And again, if DACA were to end, Texas would lose 2,600 jobs a month. That's a lot of jobs lost. And I was, you know, pushed by. I had a press conference last week on this topic, and I was pushed by one of the conservative reporters, like, well, but they're taking jobs from people, And I said, no, any American can go apply for any job they want right now. DACA has nothing to do with it. It's not going to help it or hurt it. They're free to apply for any of these jobs. The question is, they don't choose to. And our dreamers and our immigrants do perform those jobs. And if they didn't, there would be more lost jobs. And I use the example, Laura, and I'm sure the home builders here in town can tell you more. I know they're probably a part of your chamber. If you have a house to build and you can't find the roofer, which again is sort of the immigrant labor section, or the helpers, well, then you may not be able to build that house. So that delays all those businesses that supply the tools, the lumber, the screws, the tool, everything else to build that house will not have a job, will not have that purchasing power, because you're not building the house because you don't have the labor. The White House has finally heard from farmers, restaurant owners, and hotel owners that please, we don't have enough help. We need the labor. Don't hurt us. So you may have heard that although he's got this grandiose deportation plans, he's now saying that he doesn't want to go after and hurt the farmers, hotels, and restaurants. I would submit to you that there's going to be more additions to that list before it's over, because I know I held a small business roundtable, I think about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And one of the things some of the restaurant owners told me, that it's not just not having the workers, it's people being afraid to get out of the house to even come to eat at the restaurant. So they're losing revenue to the tune of 20 to 30% this year than last year, because so many people in our area, Dr. Murillo, you know my district. It's 77% Latino. Probably 30% of that 70% is unauthorized. So they're afraid. They're staying home. They're not being consumers. It's hurting business. They're not being workers. It's hurting business. They're not going to school. Eventually, that will hurt business because we won't have an educated, trained workforce. But more importantly, it's just inhumane. It's more than the jobs. It's about people. And as the Pope said, and I love our new Pope, we're all God's children, and we should be welcoming. We should treat people with dignity and respect, because they are human beings, and by and large, more than the majority of the people coming to our country are really here to seek a better life and to work and be able to send money back home. They're not the rapists and the murderers and all those people that are described by the White House. Yes, there's a few of those. There's probably just as, the same percent of those than there is crimes and criminals here in Houston. It's really no different. Every crate will have a bad apple. Remember when they told us that in elementary school? Well, every crate does have a bad apple, but you can't hurt the other 99 apples because of the actions of one.
Absolutely. And so we have been working very closely with organizations at the national, local, state level to make sure, especially the business community, is putting pressure on the White House, on our administration, anyone who will listen, because there are so many unintended consequences. Congresswoman, what advice do you have for people who might be interested in advocating? What do you suggest to them?
Well, there's a lot of volunteer work that can be done. There's a number of people here in Houston, associations and nonprofits that help and assist people with their applications, people going through the process. This afternoon, I'll be going to the immigration court here in Houston because the new twist, it's all about numbers. The White House promised mass deportations. Their goal, I think, is 3,000 per day. They're not getting there because people know their rights. People stay home. They know that if someone knocks on their door, that unless they have a warrant, and that's general advice for anybody comes knocking on your door and doesn't have a warrant, you don't have to let them in, whether it's an immigration lawyer or HPD or anybody. I mean, it's without a warrant, they are not allowed entry. It's up to you. So it's about people knowing their rights. But what they're doing is they found that just going hit and miss here and there based on old addresses doesn't really work because people move around a lot. It's a very mobile population. So then they started going after the TPS and DED holders who have some authority to be here for a year. And I began to revoke those, and now we're picking them up. Now what they're doing is going where no one else has gone, because for years, ICE had a regulation, Dr. Murillo, that specifically said that there should be safe places in a community where people should be able to gather and feel safe. That included churches, schools, hospitals, I think funeral homes, weddings. I know I argued that we needed add quinceañeras, because those should be places where people go and come freely, right? Well, the White House has overturned that. He has said, no, we're going to schools, we're going to churches, we're going to hospitals, we're going, courthouses. Courthouse is the other big one. They're going everywhere. There is no exception. And they're going to churches. They are going to schools. And now they're going to courthouses. And what they're doing is a ploy. You go in there, Laura, let's say it's your turn, it's your time today to go to the court that I'm going to visit, to go in and check in to make sure that they know where you are. You're being compliant. That's what you're supposed to do under the law. So you go, you appear, the government moves to dismiss your case. So they dismiss it. So the minute you walk out the door, you're unauthorized and don't have any protections. So they wait for you outside the door and pick you up. And they're not, it's without notice. They don't care if you say, wait, let me just call the school because I have 3 kids there, or wait because I have my elderly parent at the hospital and I need to go by and pick her up. They don't care. They're separating families. They're in some cases, they're even taking children.
And thank you for your leadership. I know the town halls have helped tremendously. You put together a card in terms of knowing your rights and that communication with the broader community. And we need people to speak up. We need people to make phone calls, as you mentioned, especially those with influence with this administration. It is going to absolutely have dire consequences for our economy, not to mention, most importantly, it's just wrong. That is not the country that we should have, and that's not the way we should operate. Congresswoman, is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience?
No, I just want to clear up a couple of other myths because I think sometimes even members of our community get sucked on and this whole idea that they're cutting that they're cutting Medicaid or they're looking at Medicaid because of fraud, waste, and abuse, and some of that fraud is that illegal aliens are getting Medicaid. That is false. It is so false. I bet you we probably can't even find one person who's undocumented that gets Medicaid because the laws are very strict for almost all our programs. The question is there if you're a U.S. citizen. Now, there may be a special program for a refugees program, but that's separate and apart from qualifying for something. So the person who's coming across the border, whether it's the southern border, the northern border, or by plane and just overstays, they're not eligible, quite frankly, for a damn thing unless it's through the detention center where they are holding them and they provide those services. But eligibility, whether it's for housing, for food stamps, all of those programs have a citizenship test. Now, there's a little wrinkle for housing if there is like 4 people in the house that are citizens and 2 that are not. They may provide housing, but it's done on a pro rata basis. So that in this case, a family of 6 and 4 are citizens, 2 are not, they would get 4/6 of the voucher, if you will, and the other, and not for the 2/6 because it is meant to cover for the citizen children in the house. So it's always bothered me that people think that they're here just for the giveaways and that they get all these things. That is false. And the last point, again, to just underscore it, in the end, this is about how to treat people. It's about who we are as a country, as you said, and who we should be. And it's a moral. It's immoral. It's about humanity. It's about making sure that we treat people as we would want them to treat us. And I think people kind of forget that. They start all the political rhetoric. And in the end, we need to remember that this is about human beings. And one of my favorite signs that I've ever seen at a protest is one that says, God did not create illegals. He just didn't. We're all children of God. We're all equal.
Well, thank you and your team for your leadership, all that you've done to make sure that you are advocating for us every day and meeting with constituents, our business community, and also for your leadership as being among the founders of this great chamber that every day tries to live up to that expectation that you all set decades ago. Congresswoman Garcia, thank you so very much.
Thank you for the invite. And if anyone has any questions, they can certainly call our office. Thank you so much, and God bless.
The Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce is the leading advocate for the Hispanic business community. In Houston, we represent over $54 billion per year in consumer spending. Our thanks to our board and staff for making sure we elevate business and advocate for a stronger economy. Hello, this is Dr. Laura Murillo, President and CEO of the Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. One of the things that your chamber does every day is that we collaborate at the local, state, and national level with other organizations, with other individuals that are doing important work that connect directly to business, to the economy, and a strong workforce. Today, I have the pleasure of visiting with Glenn Hammer, and he is the president and CEO of the Texas Association of Business. He, the team, their board, do a phenomenal job of making sure that Texans continue to do well, that our economy remains strong. Having said that, many opportunities and also, of course, many challenges. So he's going to give us an update and talk to us a little bit more about what he's seen across Texas and how this state can continue to be prosperous. Glenn, thanks so much for joining us.
Doctor, great to be on the show. And I want to thank you for being an extraordinary leader and a model when it comes to collaboration. You were with us on our trip to Mexico City during the inauguration of President Sheinbaum. And it was fun rolling with you because you're a celebrity. People know who you are and they respect you. And you added a ton to our trip that focused on trade and other important issues for the bilateral relationship.
Well, thank you, Glenn. You know, we have a very small team here at this chamber and an extraordinary board of directors, and one in common, of course, Massey Villarreal, who's been a leader not only in Texas, but across the country. And leaders that you have, such as Massey and others, really make the work that we do something that is a collaboration, but also heavy lifting, right? And so in Texas especially, we just wrapped up the legislative term. So why don't you tell us and provide us, please, just a quick update of what you have
Well,
seen from the legislature?
and I have to say, I'm glad you mentioned Massey, who was our chair for 2 years, the Babe Ruth of chamber chairs. He's chaired 4 chambers. We think that's a national world record. We, Doctor, we feel we had a very successful legislative session, both on offense and defense, if I could say, using that some football terminology. On offense, for the great businesses that you represent, probably the most important thing that happened was the exemption for personal property taxes. Sometimes it's called the inventory tax, was increased from $2,500 to $125,000. For a lot of small businesses, that's going to be a $2,500 tax cut. So that's important. There were a number of other important efforts. This was a big session for infrastructure. But and Houston plays a huge role. By the time we wake up and by the time we go to sleep, Texas will have added another 1,500 people. So what does that need? It means we need more water, we need more energy, we need more roadways, we need more port infrastructure, and the legislature delivered on that. We also know we're in the age of innovation. And I mentioned infrastructure. So we'll be investing more in energy, including advanced nuclear, which is important for the Houston region, particularly as you get some of these big data center deals. But also important is research and development. And one of the key things that this legislature did was it basically permanently extended a research and development tax credit, as well as making it more useful for small businesses and entrepreneurs who may not be paying a franchise tax at this point in time.
So for our region, in your opinion, what is something that we want to make sure that stays on the agenda
Yeah,
at state level that will continue to be pressing and important for our region moving toward the next legislative session?
yeah, you know what? And I'll say, there's also a package that passed that should increase housing affordability for workers. And Houston was often used as a model because Houston has less zoning than pretty much any other city. So when I think of what needs to be on our agenda big time, it's a continued focus on education at all levels. There was a record investment made in the K through 12 system. In fact, $8.5 billion were added to the system to fund teachers, to put additional funds into special education, to do more in literacy. So that was a big deal, and that passed with virtually every member of the legislature supporting it. We're going to continue to make record investments in our great community college system, as well as tightening credentials of value, making sure that the courses offered in our community colleges match the skills that our workforce needs. And also, we're going to continue to see big time investments in higher education, in our university system. And some of those efforts will revolve around AI, quantum computing, space, which is a big deal for the Houston region, semiconductors, and other sorts of high-tech initiatives.
So let's talk about tariffs and trade policy.
Yeah, it's a huge issue. So the tariffs are basically set on the federal level. And I'll first start out by saying, I know you are, Doctor, and we are strong supporters of what I do think is the best trade deal ever negotiated, the US-Mexico-Canada agreement. The key is we need to keep it and we need to build on it. And what is the guts of that agreement? It's tariff-free trade between the top trading partner of Texas, that's Mexico, and our second top trading partner, that's Canada. And there's a lot of turmoil on tariffs. We want to get our tariffs as close to zero as possible. Certainly in the U.S., Mexico, Canada region, but also for the rest of the world. Why? Texas, we're number one in everything, as you know, Doctor. We're the number one export state in the country by far. We export more than twice as much as California, for example. But I will put a little bit of an asterisk here. We do support fair trade. You know, the U.S. for decades has had a very, very low tariff rate. We've also had very low barriers. It is time for the rest of the world to also reciprocate. So what we'd love to see is going towards zero tariffs, as well as our trading partners remove unnecessary non-tariff barriers. Like, for example, the EU has all sorts of regulations on intellectual property and technology, and Houston is becoming a tech hotbed. People like saying that the US innovates, the EU regulates. So we're going to need those non-tariff barriers to come down. China is a different story. We need to make sure that the trade with China is more balanced and that our laws, particularly on intellectual property, are being respected, and use a rebalancing so that we can sell more energy goods, more electronics, more stuff that we produce in the state of Texas to China. And I'm optimistic that we will eventually get to that point. But it's like, I was on a plane earlier today. It was very, very bumpy. It was very turbulent. It landed. This tariff situation is going to be turbulent for some time. But I do believe that the administration now, with the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, has the right person at the right time to handle a pretty complicated issue.
Well, we need this plane to land and not crash quickly, safely, and for the interest of all parties involved, as we know that this impacts so many different industries. Everything, as you mentioned, from construction to our ports to almost everything you touch in technology, et cetera. So with your
Amen.
the advocacy that you all are doing, and we hope to do collectively when we fly into DC, and we'll bring chamber members and members from across the state of Texas to DC to continue to advocate pro-business and that we have a strong workforce. So before we wrap up, Glenn, I know.
And our small businesses need that. I mean, on the tariff side, it really, that turbulence, they cannot absorb this, and we don't want to lose small businesses because of this turbulence. So you're 100% right.
And so before we wrap up, anything that you'd like to share as it relates to what is next for the Texas Association of Business?
So just getting out of the legislative session, we're going to spend a lot of time in what we call the interim, making sure that all of these different laws that passed are properly implemented. We're going to continue to work hard on trade, tariffs, as you said. We're going to continue to work hard on immigration reform. We're at about the 13th year anniversary for DACA. These are dreamers. We don't want to get to 14 without some sort of congressional action. We do think that a lot of the tax cuts in the 2017 law need to be extended, particularly those that impact small businesses. So we're going to be more active on the federal level in the interim while we make sure that all these laws that were passed in Texas, many of them great laws, are properly implemented. And I just want to thank you for being such a great leader in the state and a great partner of ours.
Thank you. Glenn, thanks for all that you do, your staff, the board of directors, and of course, so much of what we do is dependent on our sponsors. And so we thank our sponsors for investing in these chambers, in the association, so we can continue to advocate to keep business strong and to make sure that we are growing this great state that is Texas. Glenn, my thanks, and I'll see you soon.
Look forward to it. Thank you for having me on the show.